Okay, now see if you can tell the difference between these two choices that I'm going to give in two different ways. Same two choices, but I'm presenting them in a different order. Let me know if you see a difference. So I could say, hey, you can be slothful all day, or you could be a hard worker. Or if you say, hey, you could be a hard worker, or you could just be slothful all day. Now, you might not really recognize this, but our brain tends to dwell on the second thing that you just said. So if you just end with the negative note, with the bad action, that's the last thing in their head, and that's the last thing that you think about. It's just like, do you want a house? Hello, fellow educator, and welcome back to my channel where I help parents like yourself achieve sustainable homeschooling. And one of the main pillars of that is a self-teaching curriculum where the kids take responsibility for their own education when they're ready for it. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about that give and take of responsibility, because as much as we would just like it for it to be easy, done, given, hey, you're in charge, you're doing this is what you're doing, you're taking charge of your own education, and I'm stepping back. As much as that is appealing to us, and that is a part of a sustainable formula, the truth is not every child is going to be ready for that, even though you know they are capable of it. They don't have the skills, they don't have the practice. So I want to give you some real tips, strategies, patterns of speech that you can use with them as you go back and forth with this dance of responsibility. So let's get started. Now, parenting is a hard job. Can I get a like if you agree? So why is it so challenging? Part of the reason why is because when you bring them into your family, you're bringing them home, and to the point where they leave the home, you're going through this transformation, this spectrum of, in the beginning, you are taking full responsibility. They cannot do anything on their own. They are dependent on you for everything. And then when they leave the home, hopefully, they have taken responsibility for everything themselves. They are no longer dependent on you for anything. So in this space, this transformation from A to B, where you're taking all the responsibility to where you take no responsibility, it's quite a song and dance here. It's a give and take. And you constantly have to evaluate where you're at. If you're stepping in too much, if you're not stepping in enough, or if it's, how do you know if it's just right? Now, typically when there is conflict between the two parties, the parent and the kid, it's either one or two likely scenarios. Number one, they have the responsibility, they can do it themselves, and yet you're stepping in to take responsibility when it's really not necessary. I'll give you an example of this. You've taught your child how to tie their shoes. Now you're on your way to go somewhere and you're kind of in a rush. And so you tell them, go ahead and put your shoes on, tie your shoes. And so they're doing it. They're capable of doing it themselves, but it's just taking them a long time. It's just, they're slow. And so they're doing it carefully and you're in a rush. And so you want to step in and just say, just let me do it. In that situation, you've overstepped your boundary. Like they can do it themselves. They just needed more time, but because of, a time situation, maybe sometimes it's just that you've seen them do it before and you know what the end result's going to be. You're thinking this is going to be the same thing as last time. Maybe they're going to pour milk all over the place, or yeah, they're taking too long to tie their shoe. You want to step in and take responsibility when really you shouldn't. That's one conflict, right? Because then they're like, no, I want to do it. The other side of that conflict is when you know that they are capable of taking something on, you know that they can do it, and you want them to take responsibility for it. You've given it to them, but they won't do it. And so this can often show up with the self-teaching curriculum. You know that they can read a couple chapters. You know that they can write sentences, they can write or they can copy. You know that they can complete a math lesson on their own. And you've given them that responsibility, but yet they don't want to do it. They just are daydreaming or just dawdling or trying to distract others, maybe trying to get your attention because you're on your phone or distracted or something that, the squeaky wheel gets the cheese. There could be various reasons why they're not taking responsibility when they can. Now, both of these scenarios, let's face it, can leave you feeling frustrated with yourself and with your children and creates conflict. So here's a method that will help you feel confident in where you're at with this give and take of responsibility. So whatever the situation comes up, arises, right? Take a moment, just take a pause. So when you're taking this pause and this step back, really be observant. Look at them, look at their facial expressions, their body language, see what's going on, and ask yourself, am I taking too much responsibility here? If that's the case, then you need to step back and let them sort it out themselves. And this is very common with parents and with homeschooling. We want to jump in and rescue them. We want to help them out. We want to help them with their math facts. We want to help them with this and sit there with them as they're doing their writing. Or we want to all the time just read aloud to them their reading assignment, or give them an audio book when they need to, work through some things. I always think about the Bible verse, working out their salvation with fear and trembling. Well, sometimes they just need time. They have the skills, the capabilities. Maybe they don't have the skills, they have the capabilities, and they're just practicing. They're just learning. So it's okay to step back and let them struggle with it a bit. This is a lot of times we hear, like Dr. Robinson said, one of his kids spent the whole day at his desk with the flashcards, and they didn't step in and rescue him. They said, hey, it's your day if you want to waste it. If you want to spend the whole day just sitting at your desk daydreaming, you can work through these flashcards. You can study them. So sometimes you just need to step back and give them time to practice, to work it out, to get the groove on. Being consistent really helps. If they see that they can't manipulate you into getting their own way, that's going to go a long way. So they're testing you out, they're feeling it out, they're working through it. It's okay. Take a step back. That's one end of it. But then there's the opposite side of this too, and I have heard this scenario from parents as well. Step back and ask yourself, am I not taking enough responsibility when it comes to this self-teaching environment? And again, we like the self-teaching. It's beneficial for us as well as for them, but let's face it, it's beneficial for us as well. So are we pushing it on them when they're not ready for it? Like Dr. Robinson said, if there is cheating in the home, if there is dishonesty, just stop the program. This cannot work with a child that has those kinds of, character flaws, or they're going through something like that. You need to pause the homeschooling and deal with that first, whether it's a discipline issue, a character issue. You cannot homeschool with the self-teaching curriculum a dishonest student. So ask yourself, am I not taking enough responsibility? Have I not trained them? Have I not taught them that this is what's happening, that they are incapable of going through with the self-teaching curriculum? Then you need to stop and you need to take more responsibility. If they just haven't had practice, if they don't have the capabilities, if you're thinking a 4-year-old could just sit at their desk for 5 hours a day and do a full day's work, no, they are not capable of that. You have unrealistic expectations. You're giving them too much responsibility. You need to step back in. And, one of the things that I would say when you're observing this is to really get down at their eye level. And sometimes if you're face to face or facing forward, it could feel a little adversarial. So then maybe pivot to the side and come next to them side by side and see what they're seeing. What's on their paper? What expressions, again, what body language do they have? Really examine and be observant of the situation. Don't just think, oh, they're just doing this to drive me crazy. What's going through in their head? What story are they telling themselves? Can you change that story together? Work through it, talk with them. Again, sometimes they just need a lot more practice. But here's another thing as well. Offer them choices. Okay, now see if you can tell the difference between these two choices that I'm going to give in two different ways. Same two choices, but I'm presenting them in a different order. Let me know if you see a difference. So I could say, hey, you can be slothful all day, or you could be a hard worker. Or if you say, hey, you could be a hard worker, or you could just be slothful all day. Now, you might not really recognize this, but our brain tends to dwell on the second thing that you just said. So if you just end with the negative note, with the bad action, that's the last thing in their head, and that's the last thing that you think about. It's just like, do you want option A, option B, door A, door B? A lot of times you just will go with the last thing. So when you're giving choices, give realistic, like real choices that they could choose between, and make the thing you want them to choose the second thing in that lineup. So that's just a little word trick there. Bottom line is, you need to take a step back, a pause, take some deep breaths if you have to, and ask yourself, how have I taught you this? Have I not given you the skills or the practice time necessary? And I need to step in and take more responsibility. Now, how do you know if you've gotten it right, if you've got the balance right? Well, you have the balance right when you have firm boundaries that that they are capable of, that they can stay in, all of that, and you're allowing them to experience their own real life consequences for breaking those. So a good example would be you tell them, hey, make sure you wear a hat outside, and it's cold outside, and they say, no, I don't want to wear a hat, I'm fine. Don't force it on them. Let them go outside for a little bit without a hat and see. And then you can make comments like, oh, sure would be nice if you had a hat on to keep you warm right now, wouldn't it? And then maybe, oh, magically you have a hat in your pocket. You can kind of hide it in your pocket, but don't, wait to bring it out until they have experienced the consequence. And this is something that I have really been big on, is letting them experience real life consequences. If I see that they're doing something unsafe, within reason, like they're not really going to get hurt, just like a little tumble or something. If I see that, okay, I told you not to do this, and they keep doing it, and then they fall, and then they slip, it's just like, that's what happens. So if you try to rescue them all the time from every tumble, every fall, they're not going to learn. So that's part of it. Another way that you can kind of help with this, along the lines of falling and everything, giving them responsibility. If you see, your toddler, your child, your preschooler take a little tumble and fall, instead of just running over to them every single time, like, are you okay? Are you okay? Do you need a Band-Aid? Take a step back, take a pause, step back and say, if you need me to give you hugs and cuddles, if you need my help, then just come to me and let me know. That way you're already at that age, giving them that responsibility of being in charge of their own soothing, their own self-soothing. So those are little things that you can do starting at a young age. But think about how you can give those real life consequences. So when it comes to homeschooling, our consequences, hey, if you don't get your schoolwork done, you don't get to play. You don't get to have fun for the rest of the day. You might not get to go swimming or participate in the board games or whatever it is that we're doing afterward. If you didn't finish, and you can't cave on this. If you set that boundary and it's a realistic one and it's fine, it's a good rule. That they're capable of doing it, and they just don't do it, let them have that real life consequence that they don't get to do the fun thing. They don't get to do the ice cream. And look, I know as a mom, it's so hard. You want to cave. And I'm sure that I've caved at some points as well. Like, I said, you can't have dessert unless you eat all your food. And then they didn't eat all the food. Oh, it's okay. Just give them a little bit of dessert. That's bad. I realize that's bad on my part. I need to be consistent and enforcing those boundaries and letting them experience those real life consequences. That's the only way they're really gonna learn and make that progression from us taking all the responsibility to them taking all the responsibility and making good choices. So let me give you an example here. Let's say there's a child that you've shown them the bedtime routine, brush your teeth, put your pajamas on, etc., and they get in bed and they do it a few nights in a row perfectly fine. And then one night, they're just not doing it. And you're thinking to yourself, okay, I know you can do it. I've seen you do it, but you're not doing it tonight, and you can start to feel frustrated. Well, then you realize, wait a second, they're still only 3 years old or 4 years old, and this is just a situation where you need to step in, a little bit more responsibility, and help them. Still, you can praise them for the days that they did it on their own, but sometimes I mean, parents, like, we're like this too. You know, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, and some days I come to my husband and I'm like, I just don't feel good. I just can't make dinner tonight. You know, so we want that grace given to us. Let's be mindful to give that grace to our children as well. Hey, you need a little bit of help getting ready for bedtime tonight. Help brushing your teeth. It's okay. You know, we keep working on it. You know, for the next day and day after that, for them to take more responsibility again. It's a song and dance. Another really big thing, don't miss this, is to give praise. Give lots of praise for the things that they are doing right. Give praise for the responsible things that they are doing. Don't just think it's a given. Well, I told you to do it, so of course you have to do it. I mean, it's just a given. It's the rules, or it's the curriculum, or it's just obeying your parents. Yes, I understand all of that. But praise them. We all like praise for a job well done. And kids are no different. They need it even more so. And so a lot of times you see, well, didn't I do a good job with this? You know, yes, constantly reassure them and give them praise, and that you are happy for them and you're glad that they're taking responsibility and they're doing such a great job with it and they're proving themselves trustworthy, so that you can give them more responsibility. So don't just focus on the do's and the don'ts, you know, praise them for the good that they're doing. Now, when things are, you notice, take a step back and you notice, hey, things are working really well right now. I want you to take a pause, another pause, step back, and ask yourself these two questions. What is the level of responsibility I'm giving to this child? And what is the level of responsibility that I'm taking? So you whatever situation, right? And you notice, hey, this is working out really well. What am I doing or not doing, and what are they doing or not doing as far as responsibility? And let's see if we can transpose the same level into maybe other areas in life, whether it's okay, hygiene over here, can we transfer it over to school now? You know, different things like that. If they're good with this area, maybe let's try them with this other area. You know, when it comes to cleaning and chores and pitching in, like I said, the work habit and the self-study, the school habit, they're very much linked. And so if they can be capable in taking responsibility for being diligent in cleaning their room or cleaning their bathroom or taking care of their laundry, they can prove themselves and be the same ways, take the same responsibility when it comes to grading themselves and teaching themselves, reading the lessons, and so forth. It's all very much connected. It's part of this song and dance when it comes to taking responsibility. And at the same time, think about situations that haven't worked out so well and ask yourself the same question. What level of responsibility was I taking, or what level of responsibility were they given? And try to figure it out that way. A lot of times we rack our brains like, what went wrong? What's going wrong? Why is this not working? And those kind of questions, sometimes they're really not helpful as far as finding a solution. So ask yourself these two questions instead. What level of responsibility am I taking, and what level of responsibility are they taking? Which one needs to be adjusted? And then think about it. Okay, if I stepped in and took more responsibility, what would that look like? Would that solve the problem? Might not. Then you have to think, okay, if I gave them more responsibility, you know, kind of put a little pressure on them or let them deal with those consequences, what would that look like? Would that work? That's the way to really, I feel, solve conflict when it comes to your home with the kids. If you do find interest in this, I do go over some principles in my Sustainable Homeschooling 101 course, and I will link that down below. You can also access the course through my membership site. I've done some of those NLP type of things and trainings in the membership site, and I bring it up in Q&As all the time, so you can watch that in the archive as well. All right, well, I will see you in the next video. Talk to you soon. Bye.